Hello and welcome back to another episode of Warming the Bench. This is episode 7. It's Bev and Daniela here. Bev, how are you doing today?
Well, from last week it was very hot, and although it's the first day technically of summer in England, it feels as though I'm sat in the dark. It seems like it's 9 o'clock, but
Oh,
it's only 5 o'clock. We've got tons of rain this week. So it's gone from one
oh
extreme
my
to the
goodness.
other.
Of course. Mother Nature loves to keep us on our toes. Let's just say that.
Yeah, it certainly does. Yep. What about you?
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Yeah, everything is great. Weather here again is being really nice to us, so appreciating that after a long winter. That's always lovely. And we want to thank everyone, of course, for joining us again today.
Mm,
We really do appreciate everyone who's listening in. We hope to get more of you engaging a little bit more, but we'll talk about that
yes.
towards the end of the podcast. Just a heads up for everyone, this is probably going to be a slightly longer episode than what you're used to. I can see us going quite
Quite
longer. There's quite a bit of stuff we want to cover, and we want to make sure that we get to all of it because I think there's some pretty important conversations. So Bev, I want to kick us off. Let's kick us off with what happened yesterday. The FA Cup final, your team, Manchester City winners. What did you think?
Hey,
Congratulations. How was it for you?
thank you very much indeed. Well, I I want to steer away from saying it was almost a foregone conclusion. On paper, technically, it was really, to be honest with you. But what I did hope for is that there was going to be a well contested match. Even if Man City were going to win, which they did, that it was going to be a strongly contested match. And for Brighton to
Mhm,
come out and be on fire and give City a run for their money. And in the first,
mhm.
you know, the first part of the match, the first 45 minutes, that's exactly what they did. I mean, they closed Man City down. They couldn't breathe. They stopped their spaces, and they did a little bit what Arsenal did with Man City. Yeah, in terms of
Mhm.
not making them, not allowing them to breathe and be created and kick over the top or
Yeah,
find a goal, etc. Um, and then they lapsed for 10 minutes, and in that 10 minutes, Man City got a goal, didn't they? And
correct.
I suppose that is was the difference between Man City and Brighton, is that Brighton couldn't make it count in the time that they had where they were on fire. They just weren't clinical enough.
Mhm.
And in that 10 minutes, Man City were. That was the deciding factor, really, wasn't it? And from the second half, City came out and they took the match to them and they won. Pleasing result for
Exactly.
me. I don't think that Brighton, did a bad job. I think they did a good job, all things considered. What about you, Dan? What did you think of the game?
Yeah, I agree completely. I actually thought Brighton started pretty well in the first. They came out definitely the better team, especially in that opening 25 minutes. But I think I saw a headline today, and it was Man City were perfect for 30 minutes that counted for them to win,
Yes.
and they were perfect. They were perfect towards the you know bottom half of the first half, that last 10 minutes or whatever it was, and then they were perfect in the second half when they needed to be, and they just completely shut them down and got the job done. And really, that's all that matters at the end, right? A win is a win. It doesn't really matter how you win sometimes. I know a
Yeah.
lot of people want to have a perfect game and pretty football, but at the end of the day, when you walk away with that championship, with that cup, or when you win the league or whatever it might be, no one's gonna really remember how you really did it. They're just
No.
gonna remember that you did it. So, completely
Yeah.
agree. I think with Brighton, you're absolutely correct. It showed me that they, um, are probably missing that, like, out and out striker. I do like
Yes.
Madison Haley. I don't think she's necessarily that figure for them. I
No.
am wondering if, Michelle Adjeman had stayed healthy, if she had been would have been maybe an option for them to play in this game. I think of that kind of figure, that profile would have been really cool to see her on stage at Wembley to see what she could do for Brighton. So, while the result is difficult to take, I think you often that, kind of cliche, you learn more from a loss. Brighton will probably come away from this learning so much and also learning maybe where those holes are in their team and what they can do to fill them this summer, hopefully. So it's not all bad.
No, and I quite completely agree with you with regards to Michelle Angerman. I mean, Michelle
Hmm.
is a game changer. That's why she's the super sub,
Hmm.
isn't it? She comes on and she score the goals. She does exactly what Serena asks of her, and she's a game winner, and it could have made a difference. However, she wasn't there, and what happened happened, and that's all that could have happened, if you know what I'm meaning.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
completely. Completely. Absolutely. Well, congratulations to Manchester City, domestic double. Really cool to see that for them and to see what's coming. Let's see what happens next season. Definitely going to go in as the reigning champions of both competitions, WSL and the FA Cup, and we'll see if they can defend it for next season. So it's going to be a fun one. Um, let's speaking of Manchester City, actually, nice segue. I think we're getting better on our segues, by the way. Let's chat about some transfer chaos and contract news. So last week at Man City's parade, they did a parade for Pep Guardiola leaving and the WSL champions. They kind of combined this parade all together and this celebration. And Bunny Shaw announced on stage that she is
Mm,
staying with City. It was announced it's a 4-year deal, so quite a long-term contract. She's officially the highest paid female football player on this planet, now confirmed. So I'm gonna shout some figures at you. Usually, Bev, I know you usually have the
Ah,
all the numbers and the stats and
well,
stuff,
you
but
probably can.
I'm gonna turn the tables.
Oh,
I'm
right, go
turning the
for it,
tables.
go.
So according to updated reporting this morning, it seems that the contract with Bunny will earn her roughly 1.7 million pounds a year,
Yeah,
with everything included. So that's her salary and bonuses and I guess performances and all that kind of stuff. It actually did report that it could stretch a little bit beyond that if certain performance metrics are met.
yeah,
So let's say Man City do really well in the Champions League next season, for example, there's probably an added bonus on top of that. So that's something, but at least 1.7 million is roughly that figure. Lots of money, well
yeah,
deserved,
yeah,
without question. And how it all came to be seemed a little chaotic. I know we were talking about it. We've been talking about it
yeah,
for a while, actually. It seemed that it was contract talks had not necessarily broken down, but they were definitely lagged behind. And according to reports, Megan Feringa, by the way, fantastic journalist for The Athletic, she's been
yeah,
really on top of this story. There was after the WSL title had been wrapped up and there was their own celebration, there were some really intense talks and some high figures at Man City stepped in and said, no, no, what does she want? Let's get this contract done. And
mm,
Therese and Charlotte O'Neill were able to get that finally wrapped up. So a lot going on there. Probably some fans wondering what took so long, why did it need to come to all this chaos? But all in all, it's done. Bunny's the most, highest paid player, and she got her 4-year deal, which is incredible.
yeah. Bunny's been through quite a lot in her life. I don't know if many people
Mhm,
are aware, but Bunny lost 3 of her brothers and her nephew to gang warfare. They were
mhm.
killed.
Yes.
That's a hell of a
Mhm.
lot to have to deal with.
Yeah.
And, her parents weren't
Mhm,
very keen on the idea of her becoming a football player, so she had to battle against that. Um, and she has been on the receiving end of some terrible racial abuse and harassment. So I say hats
mhm.
off to Bunny because she's come out the winner on all kinds of levels here. Um, in
Absolutely.
terms in terms of the delay, it's interesting. What do you think's gone on there in terms of Chelsea? Um, I g
Mhm,
I do you know, I did learn this week that Bunny has, a degree in communications, which figures to me
mhm.
because the way she carried herself, the way it wasn't what she said, it was what she didn't say. I just thought she played
Mhm.
it fantastically.
Yes. Well, she also has, I think, a great agent, so that's not to be
Mm,
understated. I think, footballers are understanding who they're working with these days as well and how that can benefit them, and they should be working with agents and people who understand the business side of it especially, that's very important.
Yeah.
Um, but what happened so this is all from reporting, right? Nothing has been completely confirmed by anybody, but if you wanna trust the reporting that's out there, and again, some of these journalists are really fantastic, and with the majority of them, I would look to them and say, "Yeah, I pretty much trust what they're saying or what their sources are saying." So, how we understood it was talks never completely broke down with Manchester City. However, they were definitely not near where they needed to be for them to come to some sort of agreement.
Mm,
Obviously, Bunny's agent is gonna do what is best for her, and that is, "Oh, okay, well, we're not gonna get what we want here. Let's put the feelers out for other places," because she's gonna have offers from all over the table, right? All
mhm,
over the WSL. She'll have offers from the NWSL, from other abroad clubs. The lack of options There's no lack of options, basically. Chelsea
mm,
made an offer, however, when everything kinda came to a halt about 2 weeks ago in terms of City coming back into the fold and saying, "No, no, no, we wanna get this done," and they made their offer significantly higher, Chelsea backed away because they did not wanna get into a bidding war. Now
yeah.
that's less about the character of the profile of Bunny as a player and their needs, it's more about Chelsea do have a lot of holes they need to fill in their squad, so
Yep,
I understand from a financial standpoint as well that they can't just go all out on one player. I understand why City did it, of course, also Bunny never wanted to leave City, so you always kind of felt in the back that this could get done and would get done because she made it very clear Manchester's her home, she wanted to stay. If she had gone, it would have been basically a marriage of convenience almost. She's not getting
mm,
what she wants, and Chelsea needed a
yes,
striker, so not the most
yeah,
ideal situation, and at the end of the day, you want players to be happy, right? She wants
yep,
to stay where she is, and, of course, Chelsea fans would want a player to really want to sign for them, not because she feels she's got no other options or she just has to. So it's kind of better it worked out best for everybody, I think.
mm. Yeah, absolutely, it did in the end, and,
Mhm,
Man City has built the team around Bunny. That is why
mhm.
she's such an expensive player, and she's the highest paid in the world now. So, she's got what she wants, hasn't
Absolutely.
she?
Showed her
Fantastic.
value.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Completely,
totally agree with you.
completely. And speaking of Man City, here's another little segue. Bev, we're getting really good at this. I'm really proud of us. They are involved in some transfer chaos conversation. So as of yesterday, after City's win, some nice, as we call them, transfer bombs were dropped. So it is looking that City are going to acquire Niamh Charles from Chelsea. She's got 1 year left on her contract, so that will be a transfer of some sort of financial
Mhm.
value because Layla Wahhabi has announced that she is leaving, so
Yes.
that was more so their left back option.
Yep.
Neve to City. Beth Mead is also rumored to be joining City, and that seems to be more further along in conversation from what has been reported.
I don't
And
get
then
that.
on the flip side, in you don't get that. Tell me why.
No, I don't get why Beth Mead is going to City at all because they have 2 very well, 3 effective wingers. Certainly, there's, Kirsten Kasperai. There's who's the other
Hmm.
one? Oh, Lauren Hemp, and there's one other, isn't it Rose?
Yep.
I'm yeah. So, those
Mary
3
Fowler.
are incredibly
Hmm.
effective, Man City
Hmm.
players. I
Carolyn.
can see her going on the bench. I can see her going on the bench.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Yeah.
I've heard from, like, fans saying, "Oh, well, she's going to join, Viv." Well, managers don't make
Hmm.
decisions about taking on players on the basis that they have a partner within the team, do they? 'Cause it's a bit daft, isn't
No,
it?
no, it is. I mean, it certainly happens.
Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily as it's not a focal point for sure, and decisions are not made that way, but it certainly has happened. If you look at one point, Pernilla Harder came over to play for Chelsea. Magda Eriksson was on the team already, so there are situations in which that happens. But as the defining reason, no. I think
Mm,
Beth is going to be more of a squad player. So in terms of if there's injuries, there's gaps that need to be filled, that sort of thing. That's what I can see. I certainly do not see her as a starting
no.
in any way, especially with the players that you mentioned, Lauren Hemp, Carolyn, Mary Fowler, Fujino. My gosh, the city's like forward options are stacked. I think it's
Yeah.
more of a I believe it for her might be more of a personal move, but with the condition that this is not going to be you're not going to be in the starting 11, you're gonna be a squad option, a rotation player, a subbing in player when someone needs to come off at that 70, 75-minute mark, whatever it might be. That's how I
Mm,
understand this to be, and I
mm.
think that's probably what you're going to see. So we'll see. I mean, Beth, I think she's a great option off the bench for sure, to be a little chaotic and to do what she needs to do. But in terms of if she wants a starting role, I certainly don't understand it either.
No,
So
no.
I'm with
I
you
mean,
on that side of it.
I
Yeah,
get it from a Champions League point of view because she's got Champions League experience, and Man City are gonna have
sure.
to, embolden themselves, aren't they? They're gonna have to make theirself a robust team and think about what kind of players they want, etcetera, in order to compete in the
Mhm.
Champions League. So I can see it from that point of view. And Niamh Charles is
Right.
another one.
Yeah,
She's a great player, isn't she? She's played for England at the
yeah.
highest level, so yeah, get that.
Mhm. Yeah, so that makes the Neve Charles one completely makes sense. There's a gap at that left back position
Yeah.
for City, so that makes complete sense. But with Neve leaving, that opens up a spot at Chelsea, and as of this morning, agreed in principle, Katie McCabe will join.
Yeah.
Um, this one is very interesting. Um, so if you were to look on Chelsea socials or Twitter, I would say, let's just put it this way, it's a very divided opinion. Now, I'm not going to speak for the entire fan base because obviously I'm not the entire fan base. I'm going to speak from directly my perspective. From a footballing standpoint, as much as she is, well, she's not Arsenal anymore, but she was Arsenal up until a little while ago. Um, Probably one of the best left backs in the WSL
Mm,
from a purely footballing standpoint, and also she's very versatile. So you've seen her play at center back for Arsenal, you've seen her play as a winger. There's a lot of versatility there. So I completely
mm.
understand. Chelsea have also had long-standing interest in McCabe. I don't think people realize that they went in for her about 3.5 years ago, and Arsenal said no. And she's also a childhood Chelsea fan, which is quite funny in and of itself. So I'm
That's
really not
ironic.
surprised by this move at all. Yeah, it did not come out of left field by any stretch. And I personally think it's a great option right now. We have Chloe Sarwi, who's only 17 years old. You're not going to saddle a 17-year-old with the responsibility of the left back position. She cannot play week in and week out, 2 or 3 times a week with Champions League and all that. And it's a great option to learn from somebody like McCabe from a footballing standpoint, and also it doesn't block her development, so it really does make sense. Obviously, for whatever reason, Sonia doesn't value or doesn't rate Neve Charles, and that's fine. She can rate or value whomever she wants. If this is the profile they want, this is the profile that's coming in, and again, it allows this younger player to have development opportunities and to learn from a fairly experienced player as well. So I don't think it's a bad move in any way. I don't think it's a downgrade. Some people are saying it's a downgrade. I actually think it's an upgrade personally. She's a
Mm.
left-footed player as well, which is important as a left back. But yeah, I think it's a great move, and everyone's going to be happy. She gets to stay in London, so she doesn't have to uproot her entire life either. Um, yeah, that transfer chaos is going on yesterday, so that's still in motion. What are your
But
thoughts?
I imagine that some Chelsea fans are still fixated on Hairgate.
Mhm. Probably. But you know what? We're gonna talk about the World Sevens in a bit, guys. Um, that mannequin challenge with that hair gate, I'm looking at it a little differently now because I wonder if that was a little bit of a sign, guys. Like they're trying to tip us
Yeah,
off to something we did not know yet.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Um, yeah. Yes, for sure. So that's that. A couple of more ones to speak on really quickly. As of this morning, it also seems Mary Earps and Mappy Leon have agreed also in principle to join London City Lionesses. So definitely keep an eye on that one. I think if London City really wants to um, build that WSL squad, they definitely needed a big figure. So Mary Earps would bring that in, a Lionesses figure
Mhm.
as well, coming in. I mean, former now, but you know what I mean in general.
Mm.
So kind of important to have that profile. Mappy Leon, of course, very experienced defender from Barcelona and Spain. She announced her departure late last week as well, so that's one to keep an eye on. And the biggest rumor, but nothing seems to have been agreed as of yet, is that Alexia Putellas will actually join London City as well.
Brilliant.
If you don't mind, Bev, I just want to speak really quickly to what it means for her to actually be leaving Barcelona, because I think it needs to be very well stated that this was a massive thing. She's a she grew up in La Masia, which is their academy, came up through that team, only left for a very short period. So this figure who has done so much for women's football across the board and has become a global star. I think you don't need to know too much about women's football to probably know who Alexia is. She's one of those figures. Um, really, won everything with that team, and has done so much. So I think she's earned the right to kind of go wherever she wants or do whatever she wants. The rumor is, like I
Mm.
said, London City, but we'll see. I know there's offers on the table from the NWSL as well. I think it's just gonna be a matter of what makes the most sense in this next stage of her career.
Yes, I'm in agreement with you there. I mean, she's won everything there is to win. And
Everything.
maybe you just I mean, I know that in other careers as well, people get to the point and say, "Okay,
Mhm,
now I've
mhm.
done that. I've been there, I've done that."
Yeah.
Maybe
Mhm,
throwing herself into and I'm sorry to describe it in this way, but I do see London City Lionesses as a project. You know,
mhm,
Shortcan's come along, she's put her money where her mouth is, she's building the structure, she's investing in players, the product, the fans, everything. It's a product, sorry, it's a project as far as I can see, and maybe Alexia's
mhm,
looking at that and finding that very attractive because she can be part of that from quite an early stage
mhm.
of that project, if you like.
Absolutely, and you know what? In the goodbye video that she posted, she did say she never wanted to go out on, on a down note. She wanted to go out knowing that she's given everything, and she said she has given everything to Barcelona,
Mm.
and she's depleted herself in the process of giving
Yes.
everything.
Yeah.
So I think, what you feel what it takes to become a footballer of her caliber, the training, the discipline, day in and day out, similar to what we said about Millie Bright, like, your life is not your
Yeah,
own, right?
yeah,
And I think with something like a London City, they're not competing in Champions League, they very much are a project. There's an opportunity there for a different type of challenge, but one that's
mm,
also maybe reinvigorating in a little way in a ways, and that's
yeah,
similar to if she goes to the NWSL as well. It's a different challenge, different atmosphere, maybe something that will kind of, pour back into into the tank a little bit because it seems like it's a little depleted from Barcelona, and understandably so. I mean, I don't think she could give any more, honestly, to that team or what she's
yeah,
done for that club for sure. So definitely one to
yeah.
keep an eye on. We will definitely update you guys when we have more information about this. But as of right now, it is still a rumor, and apparently all other options are on the table. So we will see what happens there for sure.
Mm, interesting.
In terms of the WSL, Bev, yeah, very
Mm,
interesting. I know we wanted to chat just a little bit since it's all wrapped up, about some of the things, maybe a rising star that we think is going to be someone who stands out, especially coming up in the next season, and just a little bit about the clubs. Who do we think is most improved, who's done
mm,
really well, and maybe who needs some improvement? Because there's probably a few, right?
absolutely, there certainly is. Well, the rising
Yeah.
young star oh, here we go, I always do this. The rising young star for me well, I started off with
Mhm,
Lola Brown, if I'm honest, she's at the top of my list, and I think she's highly
mhm.
rated by Bompasta, isn't she? I was watching
Yes.
her in the Um, oh, what is it? She's Crystal Palace, isn't she? And she was playing was it Ipswich?
Yes.
Yeah. She was playing that
Mhm.
match where it was, a playoff match, wasn't it? Or they promotion match. My gosh,
Yes.
her her precision passing, but it's speed,
Yes.
Dan. It's speed. And
Mhm.
she just
Yeah,
knows the game, doesn't she? I thought she was absolutely
she
phenomenal.
does. I agree. I agree, and I think, now that, I'm assuming her loan is over from Crystal Palace and she's gonna go back to
Yeah.
Chelsea. I don't know if she's going back on loan, but she certainly seemed to have enjoyed herself and obviously helping them get promoted, as well would have been amount of experience for her. So I completely agree. I think Lola is, it's really nice to see the academy kids shining as well because, it's great to get, young and fun talent from externally. But I think for a country like England and for any country, honestly, to know that these are players that were developed at home, developed in clubs that mean so much to the kind of the fabric of football in the country, is really
Yeah,
nice to see. And the fact that they're getting the opportunities. And Sonia is definitely someone who she loves to put the kids out there. So I don't think she
yeah,
will be lost for minutes, for sure. I agree with you on Lola. A couple of others I kind of just wanted to shout out. Young star, I'm gonna go to Tottenham for this one, Toko Koga, so their center back from Japan. Very impressed with
yeah,
her this season. I think when she was at the Asian Cup, you saw that Tottenham backline really missed her, so that's an indication of how much she's meant to that
yeah,
team. Um, and I actually went for 2 center backs in this one. I'm gonna actually, 3 to be quite honest. Jade Rose for Man City. So
yes,
I'm going to be my Canadian bias is gonna come through though for this one, but, a year ago, Jade was just graduating from university. She'd never been in a professional setup in any regard, and I think she's been such a great, addition to Man City. She's played almost
yeah,
every game for them, barring a few, and been really solid at the back considering she had no professional experience up until 9 months ago,
yeah,
and now has been, a domestic double winner in her first season, so not to be understated. I know you're a City fan, obviously, as we've spoken about.
mm.
What do you see about Jade? Do you think she's someone
Oh
who's gonna
gosh,
continue to
yes.
flourish in the Man City
I
setup?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because she's about 5'10", isn't she? So her pairing with,
Yes.
Rebecca
Mhm.
Canuck, they are perfect for that
Yeah.
role. So they are able to bring the physicality to that actual role, aren't they? And they do it really effectively
Mhm.
between them. Yeah, I rate her very
Oh,
highly.
certainly. Yeah, it's they're very, like, 2 tough center backs back there, so
Yeah, they
gives good
are.
for that Man City back line for sure.
But that's
Definitely, yeah, so those were the 2 that I had. Yeah.
sorry, it's just one of the reasons why Man City have pushed forward this season, I think.
Mhm. Oh, definitely. And I think, they'll just continue to, get better, especially as they keep up with these, in these bigger clubs and keep up with playing, right? Like, I even think of Tottenham, like Toko Koga, again, fantastic player, just gonna get better. Obviously, when you're young, you're still learning, but there's no harm in that, and, it's just gonna continue to see that development as we move forward. Most improved club. This is a good one. What do you think?
Oh gosh, there's a few I could put in there, to be honest with you. I've got on my
Mhm.
list Brighton, Tottenham,
Mhm.
and Liverpool,
Mhm.
because, Liverpool were really they'd had an awful season, to be honest,
Season.
prior to,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, Taylor coming in, and I think he's done wonders in a very
Mhm.
short amount of time. I think he needs to add to the squad, but I think he's done really well, and, they've had some narrow misses in terms of games. They've,
Mhm.
just missed out by the narrowest of margins, but
Mhm.
I think they've put in a good performance towards the end of the season. Tottenham and
Mhm.
Holt, I do like her. I think she's pretty
Yes.
good. Yeah, and
I agree. Yeah. Those
who's the other one? The other player? Oh gosh. Oh, I can't think of her name. Oh, shout out some
young
names.
one from Norway,
Yeah, is it? Yeah, yeah,
Sigupset?
that's it. Yeah, both
Yeah, Signa
those.
Gupset, yeah. She
Yeah.
was great at the Euros last year too.
Yeah, she was. That's why she was
Yeah, no,
picked to go
definitely
to
agree.
Tottenham, wasn't it? Yeah, absolutely. And Brighton,
Absolutely.
well, we only have to look at their performance yesterday, and they took out some big names
Mhm.
en route to the FA Cup. So I think, those
Yeah.
3 teams for me have made a good turnaround, good
Mhm.
improvements.
I agree. I agree completely. The one I'm gonna say that crosses over for me if we talk about maybe need a little bit of improvement would be Liverpool, and the only reason I'm saying that is it's not a knock on Gareth Taylor or those players. I'm saying it from a purely club perspective. I'm side-eyeing Liverpool a little bit because Gareth Taylor should be given a lot more resources to manage that
Yes.
squad, and Liverpool certainly have the resources. And when
Yes.
let's be clear, everyone, when I'm talking about resources, I'm talking about money
Money.
to allow him to build a squad because Yeah, money, money, show me the money, from that movie?
Yes.
Show Gareth the money a little bit because I think Liverpool, if you look at their history,
Mm.
early stages of the WSL, they were very great, they were dominant.
Yes.
And to have a massive club like that, they could be competing at the highest level in the WSL. They could realistically be pushing for Champions League if they really wanted to be, and they're not because they're not well resourced. And that's a
Mm.
shame because when you can spend $400 million over the summer on a transfer, you can give a couple million to your women's team. It's not going to kill anybody.
Totally agree.
Let's just be honest about it. I'm going to be really blunt today
Yeah, well, you
on
go
this
for
podcast. Um,
it. You go for
yeah,
it, Dan. Yeah, I
absolutely.
totally agree.
Yeah,
I
you know
mean,
what?
I'm
I
with you.
Mhm.
Yes, sorry. I'm with you in terms of
No, no.
Liverpool traditionally are a
Mhm.
are a long-standing club,
Yeah.
and if you look at the supporters of the women's game, they got the supporters there, and with that investment of money,
Mhm.
those supporters will go up and they will attend those matches because they love
Yeah.
their football, to the Liverpudlians.
Oh, yeah. They do. Merseyside over there, like, they absolutely love it. It's a big deal, and it's a shame not to see them competing, with the big dogs, as I wanna call them, even though they are technically, as a club, almost as big as you can get, right?
Yeah.
Okay, clubs who've done well. Let's do clubs who've done well, and then we'll trickle back into the needs improvement.
Well, for me, it's got to be Man City. I mean,
Yes.
Yedlers is turned around Man City, hasn't he? For many reasons. I mean, we've
Mhm,
already mentioned Rose and Rebecca Canat working together, that physicality at the
mhm,
back, which is absolutely fantastic. Um, Playing forward. I was watching something that said now that Andre, he wants City to get forward in as least passes as possible. So if you look at the
mhm.
goal by, oh crikey, I'm no good on names today. Virgino, is it Virgino? If you look, was it Virginia yesterday? She
Yeah,
scored a goal, didn't she? Well, if you look at
yes.
that, there was only about 4 or 5 passes involved, and they were straight up the pitch and then into goal. Only about 4 or 5. It went from the
Mhm,
keeper over to Bunny, then Bunny over to whoever was in the middle, then over to Virginio, and it was straight in the net.
mhm.
So he likes that kind of
Yeah,
that is, and they reckon that that's the case because he trusts
mhm.
in the player's abilities and skills. And he trusts them to do it, and
Yeah,
from that comes the creativity in order to get through on the least amount of passes, so, yeah, fantastic.
mhm. Yeah, agreed. He really changed, the way that they play, 'cause under Gareth, they used to play very, very structured, and they were very,
Yeah.
possession heavy, and there's some
Mm.
games that Man City have not been as dominant with possession, but you can see that they're very direct. So it's, "Okay,
Mm.
we'll let you have a little bit more of the ball, that's fine, but when we get the ball, we're gonna be direct, we're gonna be
Yep.
effective." You have Alex Greenwood, Jade, who can play, like, through balls, right through the midfield. They're very quick with their passing, so it's a
Yep.
little bit easier for them to be more creative when they're not, saddled with this expectation of we have to possess the ball and we have to pass it 100
Mm.
times before we get to the, the ball in
Yes.
the back of the net. So he's definitely changed, and I agree, Man City have been such a joy to watch, as much as they have been a pain in my backside as well. They have been joy to watch, so I agree. I agree on that. Um yeah, I think they've done really, really well. And in terms of needing improvement, I'm gonna go ahead and go to the little bit towards the bottom of the table. I think your West Ham probably would be the next one that I'm a little bit concerned about in terms of relegation for next season, if they do not improve
Mm.
their squad.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna throw a spanner into this one as well and say I think Arsenal need to improve
I'm
because
behind you, yes.
yeah.
Yep.
Bev, I think we've spoken about this. If you take away their Champions League win, a year
Yeah.
ago, they have not improved at all,
Nope.
and probably not getting as much heat for that because they won the Champions League.
Well, absolutely. I was gonna say to you, I mean, Chelsea's getting it in the neck, left, right, and centre, but Arsenal have escaped this.
Mhm.
Like you said, I mean, this
Yeah.
year, they have not won the Champions League. They have not won. They came
No.
in the semi-finals. And for a
Mm-mm.
club like Arsenal, again with a traditional long past like Liverpool, and that they have
Mhm.
also there's been a huge investment in Arsenal women's team that actually I'm expecting
Mhm.
trophies from Arsenal. I think they've been let off the hook. And I'm gonna go a little bit
Yes.
further and throw in the controversy that if Arsenal don't win anything again this coming season, I would question
Mhm.
Sledger's position, to be quite frank with you. I'm gonna go that far.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts?
I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you completely. I think she had, a free year because of the Champions League,
Yeah.
which was unexpected, and we know it was unexpected. They were certainly not expected to win that against Barcelona, but they did, and I think that gave a little bit of a pass. But what should have happened was the transition of that squad a year ago, in the summer and
Yes.
in the winter. Obviously, a little bit more in the summer, it's a little bit easier for transfers and so forth, but that really didn't happen, and then they did not win anything this year, and at
Mm.
one point, it looked like they could have been out of Champions League contention had they not ramped up their winning in the WSL, or not dropping points, sorry, in the WSL. So
Mm.
I completely agree with you. And they definitely have escaped a little bit of that criticism. And I think that that needs to be a little bit that the spotlight needs to be a bit more on them because, like we
Yes.
said, they have won the Champions League again, and they failed to capitalize on that and do better domestically, which is something their fans have been screaming for. They want them to do better domestically.
Mm.
So
Well,
definitely one to watch. And I agree with you on Renee.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the I've seen that in terms of the groups and the socials is that, the FA Cup in this country is really highly regarded because of its tradition, and there's always a sense of
Mhm.
David and Goliath, and that you do see giant
Yes.
slayers, those kind of games, and Brighton were it
Mhm.
in terms of slaying Arsenal this
Yes.
year. But in technically
Mhm.
speaking, that should not have happened. That should not have happened,
No,
and Arsenal should have gone through, and they should have been in the FA Cup final. They really should. It didn't
agree
happen, it didn't happen.
agreed.
But,
Mhm.
it was something that means a lot to the fans in this country.
For sure. Yeah. So I think they need to improve. And maybe with some summer business they will, but we will see for sure.
Yep,
And then I'm just going to say Chelsea, period. I don't think I need to explain any further. Chelsea fans will understand. Overall improvement needs to be better. I want
yeah,
trophies next season. All of
I'm
them.
sure.
I'm just joking, but all of them. I want all of them.
Yeah.
And everything needs to be better. So I'm just gonna leave
Yeah,
it there. I'm gonna leave it at that one because we could go into a whole separate podcast on that one. Oh my
Alright then,
goodness.
I won't say
Oh,
anything.
all right then.
My lips are sealed.
Oh my goodness. All right, you know what? Let's end off on a fun note. I think that we had mentioned that I was going to speak about this side of the pond, as we say. I'm going to leave
Mm,
that for next week because I'm going to do a little bit of a deeper dive, if you don't mind. Let's just
mm,
round off with the World Sevens because this was a fun little tournament that took place the last few days of May. I know both you and I watched it, and
yep.
what did you think about it? Were you excited about it?
Oh,
Were you locked into it? How did
absolutely.
it go?
Oh, I love it. I love it, Dan.
Mm,
It fuses together professionalism and fun. And for me, it
yes.
epitomizes what the women's game is all about. They were having fun, they were engaging the fans,
Hmm.
the fans are really there with them. Fast, furious, and
Yeah.
fun. I saw some great skills on show. Tottenham used some of their
Hmm.
academy players, so they were able to test out, the levels of
Yeah.
some of those academy players. I could go on and on and on in terms of what I thought about it. I thought it was fantastic.
It was. It was so much fun, and I think I don't know which manager it was, they said it it brings you back to that feeling of when they were kids playing with such
Yes.
freedom, but then you see
Yeah.
that skill that's on display as well, so you're like, "Oh, they're having a great time," but you also look at it and say, "Wow, there were some cracking goals and passes and all of the
Yep.
above," so it blended, like you said, all those elements together, excuse me, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely did. You could see as you just said there, you could see the purity of the game. I mean, for me,
Mhm.
the women's game is
Completely.
still in terms of purity of the game, it's still there. I don't think it's gonna take much
Mhm.
longer to change that, mind you, because we've only got to reference back to some of the things we've already been talking about in terms of, high
Mhm.
salaries, pushing forward those ceilings, etcetera, etcetera. So but you saw the purity of the game, you saw those blooded knees, those games with the boys on the
Mhm.
corner and in the parks, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and the walkouts, very, very creative, by the way. Just a shout out to Everton especially. They really went into their creative side with those walkouts. I was very impressed with them.
Yeah, I loved it.
Absolutely. All right, so World Sevens is gonna, uh, lead us into a little bit of our chat today, which we're finally gonna get to. This week's episode, we wanted to talk about characters and controversies. And World Sevens is actually a perfect segue because there was definitely some chatter online from, let's just say, bad faith characters. And let me just be blunt again, mostly men who decided to, for lack of a better term, crap all over the World Sevens and why it was
Mhm.
bad and all of this sort of thing. So World Sevens, I'm just going to give it an honorable mention to become a character in the women's game, and we can kind of keep that one aside for now. But Bev, I know you had a few that you wanted to discuss. Let's start up with what you had written down for characters and controversies.
Oh, okay then.
Like,
Some of
where do
these
we
over
start?
yes, where do we start? I mean, in terms of characters and controversies, you could have picked out a million in one, to be quite frank
Any,
with you.
it's
You
true.
could have harked back to
That's true.
the women's game, being on hold for 50 years. That in itself is absolutely horrendous. That's a big
Hmm.
controversy. You could talk about, Katie McCabe's hair pulling exercise activities. Oh god, you could go down the line, couldn't you? But I'm
Or
gonna
McCabe in
stop.
general,
Yeah, or McCabe in general. She's got a hell of a character, hasn't she? So just a
for
reminder,
sure.
and this is a great segue, can I just mention your term? A great segue
Hmm.
into our topic.
Yeah,
Our
go
actual
for it.
topic is characters and controversies.
Hmm.
So if I say to you, Dan, the dressing room, what
Hmm.
controversy and character comes to mind?
Well, okay. To be honest, there's two for me. The first one is, I'm assuming you're probably going to speak about Mary Earps. And then I'm also going to give an honorable mention to the entire Arsenal dressing room because there was a nice hit piece in The Athletic that came out about them. So both of those kind of come to mind.
Okay, yeah, well, I brought up the I brought I've brought up the dressing room because I knew that Mary Earps was in, quite strident talks with London City Lionesses, which would bring her back from PSG.
Hmm.
So, but I don't really want to hark on that too much. It's the dressing room
Right.
in terms of controversies,
Hmm.
and obviously, yes, it has to overlap with what Mary Earp said and done in terms of Hannah and the rest of it. But the dressing room.
Hmm.
Now, I want to look at that one. I want to explore the dressing room as a controversy in itself. And
Hmm.
I reflect back to Ellen White and her piece and what she said about the situation
Hmm.
regarding Mary Earps. And she drew on the
Hmm.
dressing room and she said, there is an unspoken oath of togetherness in that it's a bubble,
Hmm.
and what happens in the dressing room stays in the dressing room. And for
Hmm.
me, I'm actually going to challenge what Ellen has said because in the past, and fairly recent past, but further back, there has been a list of football players, both men and women, I hasten to add, that have taken their own
Hmm.
lives. You've got to be careful
Hmm.
here because it's a very complex situation. But the point
Yeah.
is, I'm challenging what gets said in the dressing room. I'm going to bring
Hmm.
your attention to a theory called the ant mill or The Death
Mhm.
Spiral, and it's about an
Mhm.
ant that you place it on a piece of paper and you encircle that ant with biro. So you draw all the way round the ant. Now, before you draw
Mhm.
all the way around the ant, that ant is roaming freely, okay? And then you
Mhm.
draw that encircle it, and then it stops. It doesn't go beyond that biro circle. And what I am trying to say here is that I know of many systems in society where,
Mhm.
metaphorically speaking, there is a biro circle drawn around it. The family is one of them,
Mhm.
the church is another. And we've mentioned this in terms of misogyny and
Yeah.
sexism and bullying, etc. And when a player
Mhm.
is being bullied or perceive themselves to be bullied, and let's be honest here, we're talking about perceived truth. I speak my truth, you do, Dan, and
Mhm.
it's important for us to be taken seriously when we talk
Mhm.
about our truth, yeah, our life stories. So when somebody
Yes.
is perceived to be bullied, they want that to be taken serious. But if you have, like Ellen White talks of a oath of togetherness, a bubble, and I say that in inverted comment, where do you go with that? What do you do? Where does that information get passed on? Do you see where I'm going with this, Dan?
Mhm. I do. And I agree with you to an extent. I think this might be the first time where we somewhat disagree. I don't disagree with
Oh,
the principle of what you're saying because I think there's a lot of things that have been, in terms of, bullying or abusive behaviors, inappropriate behaviors. A lot of those things have gone unchecked for many years in sport and society. You can apply that basically to anything, unfortunately, these days. So that I completely agree, and there has been that lack of support for, especially in sport. Where do you go, like you said, when there is an issue, especially if that behavior is extended to the people who are supposed to protect you or supposed to take care of you in those environments.
yeah.
Completely, completely agree. I think Ellen White specifically, if we're going to go specifics into this topic, it was less about that necessarily and more so about the team atmosphere in terms of we know that a team is like a workplace, right? Not everyone's gonna get along with their coworkers. Not
Yeah.
everyone's gonna get along with their teammates. Unfortunately, you're sometimes you're just not gonna gel with people in society, right? Like, that just
Yeah.
happens. And when teams inevitably have issues. Maybe someone misplaced a pass or someone was a little bit of a brat in training or whatever it might be. They kind of deal with it or they just say, "Hey, you know what? I didn't appreciate that. Can you maybe try this next time or can we maybe address whatever's going on here?" Those
Mm.
sorts of issues, I think that's more so what she was getting towards when it came to maybe what had gone on in that environment, in terms of Mary's specific problem or issues or whatever she was kind of going through. Again,
Mm.
had there been a lot more abusive behavior, that sort of thing, I don't think that's a problem in terms of speaking about it because that needs to be brought to light. I think it was more about team and how we address things if someone has an issue with somebody else or if, again, there was, maybe they weren't on the same page in terms of the game or whatever it might be, some, miscommunications, not communicating effectively, those sorts of things, because then that kind of opens the door for others to look inward and start to pick apart, well, who's, and unfortunately it does become gossipy too in some ways, like who are the people
Mm.
that are problems, quote unquote, in the
Mm.
dressing room when it might not even be that. It might just be we don't really get along, and that's okay, right? Because not everyone's going to get
Mm.
along. But in
Yeah.
terms of what you're saying completely, and I know that there was, a player, in the WSL2, Maddie, I think her name was.
Mm.
There was a
Cusack.
lot of bullying that went on. Yeah, Maddie
Mm.
Cusack, thank you. And that situation, that is not a situation where whatever's going on in the locker room or whatever went on in that environment needs to stay there because obviously that is a situation in which she could not manage the pressure and the everyday environment of what was going on in that club and in her life and was made to feel worse, and that, unfortunately impacted her, of course. Completely agree with you.
Mm. Uh, it's very difficult though, isn't it, Dan? Because
Yeah.
in
Where do you draw the line?
football In football
Mhm,
and in any other team sport, there is always somebody clumping at your heels. There's always somebody snapping at your heels. So,
oh,
in
for
terms
sure.
of a striker, I mean, at the moment, Bunny is at the top. She's
Mhm,
at the top of her career. She's at the peak of her career. But it won't be too
mhm,
long and somebody else will be behind her, snapping at her heels.
for sure.
Absolutely.
Mhm,
And her time will go and somebody
yeah,
else will take place. And it must be, and I
mhm,
always remember Fran Kirby talking about this. She said, "I was always looking about, who could I how could I push forward my career, and play
mhm,
essentially and get the minutes to play, and then from playing and getting the minutes, would I be chosen for England?" Which ultimately was, the aim as a player. That's the ultimate thing that you
correct.
want to do, is play for your country. And she said it wasn't
Mhm,
until I was laid off sick or with an injury did I actually start to think about what that meant for the players' places that I took. Because somebody was at that
mhm,
time took her place because she was laid off injured. And
yeah,
and
I
how cutthroat it is, and how it sits on the
mhm,
borders of many different types of behavior. Do you know what I'm saying?
mhm,
The borderlines
yep,
of many
nope,
different
I
types
agree.
of behaviors. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Friend's been very open about, I think I listened to something about her and she kind of admitted like, "Oh, back in the day, I maybe I wasn't the best teammate or I wasn't the best,
Yes.
example in a team environment," and so forth. And I think that's a little bit what I was more so getting at. So there are going to be
Yes.
situations where people maybe aren't the best teammate because of whatever, maybe it's competitiveness, whatever it might be. And that's what I fear if all of that comes to light, everyone is perceived
Mm,
to be a bad person in some way, and that's not
mm,
necessarily true because you're gonna get competitive environments.
mm.
Um, so let's say that sort of thing, keeping that kind of in the dressing room, because like, let's be honest, we all have crappy days when we go to work or whatever it might be. Maybe you show up and you're not the best teammate, and that says something about you certainly, but it's kind of how you recover from it, or are you perpetrating other behaviors in the process of not being that best teammate? That I think that's where
Absolutely.
it kinda gets, where that line draws, right? Or where you wanna draw that line for sure.
I think, yeah, and I totally agree with what you're saying there, Dan. I think for me, I just wanted to bring in a different dynamic to what
Oh, for
I
sure.
completely understand what you're saying, and I completely get what Ellen's saying,
Mhm.
in that it could have been
Yes.
dealt with differently by Mary, in that she could have taken Hannah aside and say, "Can we just have a chat? I need to get a few things off my chest.
Mhm.
I'm not happy about this and I'm not happy
Yeah.
about this. Can we talk it through?" And kept it in the dressing
Sure.
room. Totally get that. But there
Mm.
was just a
Yeah.
different outlook on it. I think there are things, it is a very complex and difficult environment in which
Situation.
to operate, and it's
Mhm.
exceptional and
Yeah.
unusual because there aren't gonna be many
Oh,
footballers
yeah.
in Sydney, are there?
No, there's not. It's a very interesting, like, a team dynamic can also be looked at almost like a family dynamic, right? Like, it's
Yeah,
that kind of atmosphere, and
absolutely.
honestly, some of especially, maybe not necessarily at the national level, but even club atmosphere, they probably spend more time with their club teammates than they do with their actual families, so it
Yep.
really is like a family dynamic, right? And, as we know, family dynamics can be very complicated and very complex, and there are maybe some very interesting characters, for better or for worse, depending on what your family looks like. Probably have both. We
Yep,
all probably have both. There's kind of the crazy ones, there's the ones who are considered black sheeps for whatever purpose. I feel like that's a
yeah,
team atmosphere 100%. You could probably have all those characters in it,
yeah, yeah.
for sure. Yeah,
Can I
no, I completely agree with you. It's very interesting.
can I just finish off with Mary, really? And I just want to point
Sure.
out, because, I mean, she did get a lot of flack from that. And I suppose in the way
Mm,
that she did it, perhaps she did deservedly so on some levels. But I do want to present a
mm,
balance here, and that I made like a pie chart, and I broke down all the dynamics and different sides to her personality. And I thought, well, she's very popular. She's a role model. There was the Nike
mhm.
challenge over the shirt. She made goalkeepers visible, and young girls
Yes.
and young boys aspire to be goalies. Because of that visibility,
Yeah.
she's had a successful career.
Mhm,
She's a Euro champ. She has a big
mhm.
personality, and she's a personality in terms of being a celebrity and a role model. There are
Yes.
many different elements to her personality, and I don't want her to be seen as
Mhm.
just this one thing. She's not defined by that.
No, no. I think it goes it just she's kind of the complexity of a person, right? It's there's
Yes.
no perfect person, and we all have
Nope.
our positives, we have our flaws, and all of that can we're very multidimensional, and that's what I see
Yeah.
Mary Earps. And to be quite honest, I don't even think if we just kind of pivot here for 1 second, I don't even think it was necessarily, the flack, like, I don't completely agree with it either. I think it was just a matter of bad timing, to be quite honest.
Yes.
Had that book been come out next year, I don't think anybody would be looking at it in the same way. I think it was just the timing of it all, and that's
Yes.
not something she could really control. That's, publishers determine dates. There's so many things that go into that, right?
Mm.
And perhaps it's just the handling of it from a logistics standpoint too. It's not even that, everyone has the absolute opportunity and the right to tell their stories and how they see fit. Sometimes just unfortunately when they get told, it kind of coincides with a whole bunch of other things and it makes it look worse than what it actually is, if that makes sense.
Mhm. I agree. Absolutely agree. Yeah, I think she was
Mhm.
badly advised, if I'm
Com
honest.
For sure, definitely. This is why I said players need to be very, cautious of who they work with and very smart about who they
Yes.
work with because
Yeah,
sometimes people do not have
absolutely.
your best interests at heart, for sure,
No, they don't. No.
completely. No, absolutely. So, that was an interesting one. Can we go to one on my list? Because I think this is gonna take up a little bit of time, unfortunately. One of my it's kind of a character and a controversy, and this, flows into some of our transfer chat, is, London City Lionesses, and specifically a character such as Michelle Kang.
Mm.
Now, I marked this to kind of flow on both sides because I think Michelle Kang in herself is a character. I think she's always looking so glamorous. She seems to pop up everywhere. She'll be in London 1 minute and then she's in Washington watching the Washington Spirit. And then she's at
Mm.
the Champions League final. And I'm just wondering, she seems like there's five versions of her because how are you traveling this much, first of all? It's very fabulous. I'm like, "How are you do you have 3 versions of you that pop up everywhere?" Because she's all over the place. I would love to see what her air miles points are like.
Yeah.
And aside from that, but in all seriousness, Michelle Kang is an interesting figure because, I read a really good article. She's getting a lot of love today, actually, Megan Feringa, sorry, from The Athletic. She wrote a very interesting piece about Michelle Kang, the London City Lionesses, not specifically them, but about a figure like her, and about money and the kind of hypocritical paradox, as what she called it, that Michelle Kang presents in the women's game.
Mm.
And the reason she says this is because there was a really interesting part of the article, and I'm going to link it for all of our listeners because I really want people to read it. It's free to read on The Athletic as well. And one line was about speaking about how Michelle Kang is this person who's putting a whole bunch of money into the women's game. And it's not so much about what she's doing, it's about the lack of it everywhere else. So,
Yes.
whether you agree or disagree with her and multi-club ownership, and believe me, guys, when we speak about this, Bev and I completely understand some of the commentary towards multi-club ownership and the type of figure that Michelle Kang is. This is a very nuanced topic, and we completely agree with that. However, a lot of comments that have come out, she's ruining the game, they're buying all these players, they're doing all these things. It's something that Megan Fringa said in her article, and it was, "The women's game wants money, but they want
Mhm.
it in a very humble and civil manner." And I don't think those things can coexist when you're talking about properly
No.
resourcing the game,
No.
because you're going to need people with money, and unfortunately, a billionaire, and Michelle Kang is a billionaire, and ethics and morals do not exist together.
No.
So the reason she's such a character is because she's really challenging um, the women's football fan base to think about how do you want this game to grow? Do you want it to grow organically, which there's a lot of support for that and understanding why it needs to grow organically?
Mm.
Do you want it to kind of become a place of we need to be properly resourced and we need to do this in a more quick manner so that it does eventually evolve more organically? Because there's a lot of kind of intertwining roads there. Or do you want this to be a sport that it eventually will become or needs to be very profitable? And if you need it to be very profitable quicker, it's going to come with figures like Michelle Kang because that's who we need to look to in order for it to
Yeah,
evolve in the way that we want it to evolve.
yeah.
And what I do find, and we've spoken a lot about misogyny and sexism, the way people speak about Michelle Kang is they do hold her to a higher standard, as if
Yes.
her being a billionaire and a woman is
Mm,
somehow any less. She's a billionaire at the end of the day. She's a billionaire like your Jeff Bezos, like your people that own Twitter, Elon Musk, whatever. She's still a billionaire at the end of the day. And I don't think she should be held to a higher standard because she's a woman. She's
mm.
someone who has a lot of money. And again, with someone who has a lot of money, you're not going to have a perfect person with a perfect moral compass and that always acts in a completely ethical manner. That's just a reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now that I've ranted about that one, what do you think? Because this is a really interesting topic when you really dig into people's opinions on it.
Oh, Dan, I'm with you. I was
Yeah.
funnily enough, I was listening or watching some interviews, with Michelle, and she
Mhm,
was saying she goes in for a company 'cause she'd invested in a health company before she'd got into the women's game, and she was saying that
mhm,
she comes in when a company is in transition or when it's falling apart and it needs to be swept up with money and to take it
mhm.
forward in a different direction.
Yes.
Now, if you look at, I always call him Mr. Venus Williams. Or, no, it's not Venus Williams. What's his name? You know what I mean, and don't
Serena.
you? Serena Williams, Mr.
Yeah, yeah.
Serena Williams O'Hara.
Yes.
Now
Yep.
he spoke about he spends his entire most of his life in front of a
Mhm.
laptop, monitoring
Yes.
patterns and trends, and
Yes.
fashions, and he said,
Mhm,
"Now is the right time to be investing in the women's game because all the patterns and all the trends are telling you now is right. It's ripe,
yes.
and all the conditions
Mhm,
are there." And Michelle Can was saying exactly the same thing. And her
mhm,
hope is that it's not just her that invests, that when they do that, because of these patterns in trends, that you will get other business people invest in the women's game as well. And it is,
exactly.
yeah, it is. And if you want the women's game to be taken forward, I'm afraid it needs money. Now I'm going to cite
Mhm.
it's happened today, funny enough. It links to what we're talking about. Plymouth Argyle women's team has been folded
Yes.
today. They received an
Yep.
email from the board. They didn't have any contact with them whatsoever. Now, shame on, no, I'm not getting, it's not being sentimental here, Dan, but they've
No,
missed business opportunity. I'm talking a business opportunity because they're not
I
invested in
agree.
the women's game, and they've got plenty of money there from the men's that they could invest in the women's
Mhm.
game. So, no, it needs money, and it's an
Yep.
incredibly difficult balance, and you will lose. Like we said just now, I'm afraid the purity of the game will probably be surrendered for it in order to move
Mhm,
forward. But my hope long term is that everybody to a certain tier, because there's
mhm.
many, many tiers within in the United Kingdom, um, that most, at least most football players can earn a decent salary so that they can think about getting a mortgage, that they can invest in their children's futures if they decide to have them, that is, and in their own futures and their
Mhm.
pensions, so they can live in the same way as
Yes,
most of us. Yeah? So we have a level pay
I
base
agree.
yeah, a
Mhm.
basic
Yeah. Mhm.
basic at the yeah, basis, if you like.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I agree, and you know what? This is actually really interesting. We touched on, um in the transfer talk, we touched on, these players that are potentially going to London City, and one of the biggest criticism I keep seeing is, for example, let's just take Alexia, okay? And then I'm gonna pivot this down the table of players. The argument I keep seeing is, why would she want to go to London City? Aside from the footballing and everything, my brain immediately goes to, why not?
Absolutely.
We're in an era we're in an era right now that female football players, even of Alexia's caliber, who's arguably the best player in the world, still has to think about financial security. Let's take a
Yes.
step back for 1 second. She, as at her level, does not even have the ability to retire comfortably and live
Yes.
comfortably for the rest of her life should she want to not do anything else, as a
No,
lot of male players do. All they do is retire and invest their money elsewhere. She can't do that.
abs no.
So if somebody like Alexia can't do that, and Michelle Kang or a Michelle Kang figure comes to her and says, "You know what? We're gonna give you a couple $1,000,000 a year for the next few years, and that's you're gonna make that money," and then she can look at that and say, "Oh, that's fantastic. I can go invest that and now be financially secure to a degree. You're not gonna
Absolutely.
be living a lap of luxury. Why not?" And again, if she can't
Absolutely.
do that, then somebody down in the 4th tier can't do that, especially cannot do that. The financial security is not there. And
No.
so when we speak about Michelle Kang figures, "Oh, they're ruining the game." They're really not.
No, they're
If you
really
wanna have
not.
a conversation about they're not the nuance behind the ethics and so forth, whatever, we can talk about that. However, my brain also goes to, if you support a massive Premier League club, you're already on the outskirts of ethics and morals. Let's be serious right now.
Yes.
The big
Yes.
clubs are all unethical in their ways. They do not have the greatest moral compass. If you use social media, you are supporting an unethical billionaire. It trickles down to every fabric of your life,
Yes.
basically. So
Absolutely.
when we exactly like you said, you wanna grow the game, unfortunately, it will come with maybe figures we don't necessarily like or don't necessarily understand or don't agree with their principles or whatever it might be, but
Mm.
that's how every business or how every, very profitable entity has been brought forward,
Mm.
when it needs to be.
Look, we've spoken time and time again about
Mhm,
the women's game in terms of its structure, especially over here, is very wobbly.
mhm.
Because it's not an equal
Yes,
playing field. It is very wobbly, and we
exactly.
spoke time and time again that it's like a plane taking off, or if you like, a rocket going to the moon, and it's not got the
Mhm,
launch pad is not properly constructed. That's the way I see it,
correct. And I
metaphorically
think
speaking.
yes, and that's actually such a great metaphor, and I think when, you always see the commentary of, "Oh, equal pay," that's not what people are
No, no,
saying.
no, no, they don't
Actually,
want
I'm
that.
gonna go to no. No, I'm gonna go to Sam Kerr actually said this, and Sam is not someone who speaks very, very broadly about this kind of stuff. She said, "We don't want equal pay. What we want is an equal playing ground."
Yep.
So if 30 years ago, when the Premier League, for example, was a little bit in a different space, if you were given X, Y, and Z to prosper, we should be given X, Y, and Z to prosper as well.
Yes.
Not that
Yes.
we want to be paid £25,000,000 a year. That's not what we're saying. It's are the basics there? Is the foundation the same? Are the resources the same? And then
Yes.
we can move forward with it. That's what it is.
They want, they want, a great training, center,
Mhm.
so that they have
Yep.
access to physiotherapy and nutrition
Staff.
and diet.
Yeah.
That is what they're looking for,
Mhm.
and that they're not gonna end up with
Yeah.
so many ACLs or out of action during the course of their career. That is what they're looking for, that they
Mhm.
want decent standard playing fields. I told you before when we've had these discussions, when when they were playing,
Mhm.
Arsenal was playing Real Madrid in the Champions League,
Mhm.
it was not good enough the standard of pitch that they were on. And Renee said, "Oh, well, I suppose it was an equal playing field because both of us were playing on that playing field." Well, that's not good enough, Renee. You
Yeah.
need to up your standards. It really wasn't for that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Ella Toon
Yeah.
said the same this morning. I saw a clip of hers, and she said, "No, we're not talking about equal pay. We're talking about those things that also Sam Kerr's mentioned too."
Mhm. Exactly. Completely. And I think this could be a very long conversation because Michelle Kang brings up a lot of conversations about money and resources and what that looks like and the lack of it. And I think that we're basically on the same page that it needs to be better overall. It's not necessarily about her money, it's about the lack of it and the lack of resources everywhere else. So that is a
Yeah.
massive character and controversy, depending on how you want to look at it in the women's game for sure. Let's go back to one on your list, because I know you had a couple you wanted to touch on.
Well, I've dealt with 2 characters there. You're gonna have to help me with this. Now,
Okay.
this may be I don't know. I'm going back to our timelines, and how I started off
Mhm,
and then we kind of joined together because of a shared
mhm,
passion. Hence, this is why we're doing this podcast. I'm going to talk about a character, Chloe Kelly. Now, again,
mhm,
I did a pie chart and I broke down all the aspects of her character. And I'm sure others could phone in if they could and tell me other characteristics that they could add to this. But I'm looking at her that she is a great branding ambassador. Uh, she's certainly got a
mhm,
branding set and she's looking after herself and her family there. Um, she's a
mhm,
great game changer. You only have to look at the finalissima, um, the Euros of
mhm.
2022 and 2025 to see that she won it for England. She is
Yes.
a resilient person in character. You only have to look at her experience and the setback that she had at City. She's a
Mhm,
very popular amongst fans. She's a great role model to the youngsters. Lots of them tend to look up to her. She's very confident,
yes.
but you know what? I have
Mhm,
a problem. I really have to fight hard
mhm,
to be supportive of her because there's all these wonderful things that she has. And then,
mhm.
can you remember the bus stop thing they had back last year, the bus stop parade? And I
Mm,
think she's on the
yes,
stage
vaguely.
and she's yeah,
Mhm,
and she said the F word. And for me, that took me
mhm,
back 10 steps with her because I thought, "Do you know, Chloe, you don't need to say that. Everything else that I've just
yeah,
pointed out to you does the talking for
mhm,
you. And you talk with your feet as well,
mhm,
Chloe. You don't There is an aspect to her personality that I feel is
mhm.
performative, and I have to fight
Okay.
with trying to keep everything in balance. Dan, can you help me here, if you can?
Yes, I understand what you mean, and I think this is a common one, and I think if we, really look into WSL fans specifically, I think you will probably find that some people have a very similar opinion or a very similar view on Chloe Kelly that you do. I don't actually see it necessarily as performative. What I think is there, and I'm gonna say something probably a little controversial, I think that that actually is more of who she is, and unfortunately, it has let itself into her overall personality, and that is potentially why we do not see her as a bigger figure in the game. So, whatever had transpired at City, I don't know. Gareth Taylor seems to fall out with some players. I don't know if that's just his management style or what his situation is. That happened there. You don't see her as a full starter at Arsenal either. I wonder if there's some just general personality or attitude. I don't want to levy accusations at people, certainly, but if there's something there that maybe is a little bit off putting in some ways in a team
Mm,
environment towards coaches, certainly as a fan of the game, you're kind of seeing certain things that you're like, I don't really get that. Like, what's happening here, sort of thing. I wonder if that's
mm,
just naturally a little bit more of her character or her personality. And because it is, um, really, counteracted with this all that great stuff that you mentioned, it's a little bit hard for people to realize that somebody could potentially be both. Maybe that there
Yes.
are, those flaws there in some ways, or I don't even wanna call it a flaw, but just maybe, something that everyone has their personality quirks. Let's call it a quirk, right?
Mm.
And because maybe we expect her to be a certain way because of all the positive things, and
Mm.
perhaps there's a little bit of expectation there, or perhaps it's just a little bit more of you're seeing the real Chloe Kelly, and it's not a perfect figure or not a perfect
Maybe,
person that you expect it to be. Yeah, it could be.
maybe,
Could very
maybe.
well
I
be.
mean,
Yeah, that's how I see it.
yeah, the topic is
Mhm,
controversies and, characters, and I think they're both interconnected and overlap. So,
for
in
sure.
itself, I think she's
Mhm,
a brand. I think she's a brand,
mhm,
and on the basis of what you've just said, it encapsulates all of these things.
mhm. Yeah. No, completely. And I think if you wanna look to the other kind of side of that, I almost contrast her to a Megan Rapinoe, back in her day, who was
Mm.
a little bit controversial, and the only reason Megan Rapinoe was controversial was because she was not afraid to say things publicly that needed to be said, and unfortunately, people expected her to be this star of the US women's national team, just be there, smile, be happy that you are on the best team in the world, for the longest time and so forth. And she said, "Hang on a minute. Now that you've given me this platform, I'm going to tell you what it's really like. I'm going to tell you
Yes.
we don't get paid as much as we need to be paid. I'm going to tell you the resources are lacking. I'm going to tell you it's not okay to be homophobic. It's not okay to be racist." So she was that kind of a figure, and that also rubbed people the wrong way in a lot of ways because she
Mm.
maybe went about it in very loud ways, went about it in using her platform in a way that was different. Again, it's not the same as Chloe Kelly, but I think about a contrasting figure like that because that also a lot of people struggle to be fans of her because her activism side or whatever it might be was sometimes off-putting to people. But unfortunately,
Mm.
when you need to get a message across, you can't worry about people's comfort levels. You just need to say and do what needs to be done. And I
Mm.
think on the opposite side, like we were just saying about Chloe Kelly, maybe it is her a little bit more of her personality, and we're not necessarily comfortable with that because we're looking at her in a way that we think she needs to be.
Yes, that is why I said, "Help me out here, Dan," because I needed that,
Yeah.
a different perspective, a fresh perspective.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I
Certainly.
think
It's always good.
to be honest, is I
Mhm.
think to be honest this is something, to one degree or another, that the women game suffers
Mhm.
with the men, some of the men,
Yes.
in the bu in the sense of
Mhm.
the bullying that comes their way, don't you think so? Because even
Oh,
more so,
completely.
you could put this on a spectrum, and that these men, these
Mhm.
misogynists, these bullies, "No, you are meant to be tied to the kitchen sink." I mean,
This way.
that's at the far end, if you like,
Yep.
in terms of a
Mhm.
perception of what a traditional perception of women, and I think even us
Yeah.
fans of the game can be
Mhm.
challenged to one degree or another.
Of course.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because
Of
they
course, we
are.
can what? It
Yeah,
forces us. Yeah.
sorry,
It
go on.
forces us to look inward. A little bit. Yeah,
Yes,
it forces us to look inward a little bit. Maybe we have our own internal biases, right? Because we always talk about misogyny and sexism. These are not specifically male things. They're more upheld by a patriarchal system, but we contribute to that as well. So sometimes we
yes,
might look at a figure like a Chloe Kelly and say, "Oh man, like why did she need to do that?" But it's maybe that's just her personality and we need to accept that that's part of it, right? And
yeah.
we it's because we've put her image in our brain as something and that could be contributing to maybe some little internalized biases that we have as well about what you need to be or how you need to be, especially when you present yourself in other ways as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. You've just, put things into
Mhm.
perspective for me, but, yes, that is why I
Beautiful.
brought it up because I knew you would do that.
Incredible. All right, there's one more I just want to touch on really quickly, Bev, and I think you're going to completely understand when I bring this person up. And this is not a football player, but it is a massive figure in women's football. And I'm going to give a little love to our former lady boss, Emma Hayes.
Oh,
Um, Definitely a character. Without question, she's
Mm.
definitely a character. She has quite the personality. I think, in her last Chelsea season, you saw quite a bit of that personality, whether she was spouting off poetry or pushing Jonas Eidevall out of the way, for whatever reason was going on there. She's quite the character. And maybe, hasn't always said the right thing, so maybe a little bit of controversial things. But she's more so a character for me because I think what she has done for the women's game in general, people speak a lot about what she did for Chelsea, and that cannot be understated. But I think what she has just done for women's football in general, specifically in England, um, she's probably going to go down as one of the most beloved and most successful managers in women's football history,
Mm.
um, for her impact, the standards that she pushed not only for Chelsea, but for the WSL. She wasn't afraid to speak up as well when things were not right, when pitches were frozen and they didn't do them properly and all, do all these sorts of things. She was never afraid to speak up about what women deserve and what the standard needs to be in order to be a
Yeah.
professional environment and a professional league and all these sorts of things. And I think that's an incredible character. And it's really going to be hard to see not having sorry, not to see her in a league environment anymore because she's obviously a little more removed now as a national team coach, but also it's difficult not to see an Emma Hayes everywhere because you would hope that there would be a lot more figures like her in the game.
Mm. I totally agree. I absolutely. Do you know what?
Mhm,
She is the female coach
mhm.
version equivalent of Michelle Kang.
Yes, you know what? I agree. I agree
Yeah,
completely. Some
yeah,
people are, she kinda sometimes she irritates people, but in the best way possible because it makes people think about why she's irritating them, and most of the time it's
yes.
because she is saying something that needs to be said or doing something that needs to be done.
Absolutely. I mean, she was the trailblazer. She was the female coach that was the trailblazer. Like you've just said, she talked about the standard of the pitch. That's not good enough. They should have equivalent training facilities. They should have this.
Mhm.
They should have that, and treated as professionals.
Yeah.
And all that is true. And that's exactly what Michelle Can is doing, but in terms of money.
Mhm. Exactly. Yep. It's
You
it's
need those kind of
advocacy in
people.
different ways.
Yeah, it is. You
Yeah.
need those
You
kind of
completely
big
do.
characters, Dan. You need those kind like you mentioned, Rapinoe. Well, she's another one. Chloe
Yep.
Kelly is another one.
Mhm.
All of them combined,
Mhm.
they're really they're putting out their challenging conversations, and that is what the women's game needs. It needs these kind of characters on all kinds of levels.
Mhm. Agree. We need them at every level, and we need, a diverse group of them, and when I say that, I mean from all walks of life, and we especially need, male advocates as well, I think is very
Yes,
important too,
yes, it
um,
is.
because it cannot continue to be women pushing everything forward. As much as we do a lot, we need advocates of all kinds, basically.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, Emma was one of them that I wanted to highlight because I think you can't talk about women's football without potentially speaking about Emma Hayes and what she's done for the game,
Oh
and what she's
gosh, no.
probably going to continue to do. Because I don't see the US slowing down anytime soon, so I think we'll be speaking about her for quite some time.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree. Although I have to say from a purely selfish point of view, when Wiegman eventually moves on, I hope she takes over and manages England.
Yeah, I think you're not alone. I don't I feel like if you were looking at a replacement for Serena eventually, Emma Hayes seems like the most logical one.
Yeah,
She's probably the next best coach, if not on par with Serena, and she's English, so it would be nice to see an English woman, as the head coach of your team, of course. That's the
yeah.
ideal, setup for sure, but that makes complete sense, and you're definitely not alone there. What else did you have for us, Bev?
Well, I'm gonna finish
Let's do
with
one more.
the kiss. The kiss. What do you think I'm
The
referring to
kiss.
there? The kiss.
The World Cup. in the World Cup.
Yes, it should be that kiss,
Yeah.
not the kiss, because I
Mhm.
feel that the kiss, I know we deal with semantics, but actually semantics makes a big difference, especially to the person that was the victim or on the receiving end of it. That kiss,
Yes.
the kiss makes it sound soft, as though it doesn't matter, it's
Mhm.
quite soft and dainty, but that kiss, well, there
Yeah.
needs to be something explored. And when I
Mhm.
saw it, when they were lining up to get their medals, etcetera, when I saw Louis
Mhm.
Rubiales do what he did,
Mhm.
I immediately thought, "My god, he's invaded her space there." He virtually cut her blood supply off and her oxygen.
Yeah.
He grabbed her so
Yep.
tightly that she couldn't get out of that space, and I also felt, Dan, that
Mhm.
he'd robbed her of that moment. What are your thoughts?
Uh, completely. You know, the Spanish national team, there had been a lot of conversation
Yeah,
leading into that World Cup and afterwards about, the things that have gone on in that federation and how corrupt it was and the treatment of women specifically, and they got to a World Cup final and won the World Cup in spite of all those things.
yeah,
So, all of that poor behavior, all of the shit, excuse my language, they've had to put up with,
uh,
they still went and said, "You know what? We're going to some of us are gonna come back into this environment, and I do not fault anyone for whoever walked away and chose to stay away from the national team, I applaud them. If they walked
yeah,
away and then came back, because there was a lot of players that had boycotted going for a while, and they decided they wanted to come play for Spain again. I don't blame them at all either. Some people thought it was a crappy thing for them to do. I don't agree because they were making a stand in their own way. And what they did was they said, "Okay, all of this other stuff, we're gonna put it to the side. We're gonna play for each other. We're gonna play for our country and for our
uh,
fans." And they
uh,
did that. And in that moment, that man just basically said, "Everything you guys just did doesn't matter because 'cause I'm gonna take up this space. I'm going to assault somebody in public
uh,
on camera, and I'm
uh.
going to laugh about it afterwards because that's exactly what he did."
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
what
Uh,
yeah, the trajectory after that of what transpired, how Jenny Hermoso was basically ran out of Spain, and
uh,
what she had to deal with from an abuse standpoint from the media and all of these things, that moment should have been this incredible thing for Spain to celebrate, and they were absolutely, like you said, robbed of that moment, and Jenny specifically was robbed of this incredible accomplishment,
uh,
that she has not really gotten a second crack at because she's kind of been on the outskirts and pretty much omitted from the team now,
uh,
which speaks a lot to internal things there as well, but it was a really disgusting moment for so many reasons, but just what it stood for was the
mm.
worst part.
Yeah, somebody did say it needed to happen. Very sad that Jenny Hermoso was on the receiving
Yeah.
end, but it needed to
Mhm.
happen because it punctuated
Mhm.
the history of, oh, it was
Yes.
terrible, of the Spanish team and what the FA and the structures around it had dished out to the Spanish
Yeah.
women's team. They were the backstory
Mhm.
is they were on the receiving end of sexism, misogyny,
Mhm.
substandard
Yeah.
infrastructure. They were body and fat
Mhm.
shamed. It was horrific what they
Yeah.
were on the receiving end. But the fact that he did that just punctuated and reflected that backstory of the Spanish women.
Exactly, and I think that documentary they had, I'm not gonna try to say it in Spanish, what the name is, but there's a documentary about that whole situation, and to see the fracturedness of that squad and, to see how all of these situations, how misogyny, how sexism has infiltrated into their spaces, and how it's influenced some of them. Some of them were very resistant to standing up to the Federation, were not supportive of Jenny and what she was doing. It just it opened up a lot of eyes to, like you said, what was going on there, beforehand and probably continues, unfortunately, but also just how much these women have been influenced in different ways for the better, for the worse, whatever it might be, because of these behaviors and because of what transpired on that stage that day.
Mm,
And it's very fascinating, and I think, unfortunately, it has not really resolved itself and has not really changed too many attitudes in Spain, but at least now there are a lot of eyes on it, and we
mm,
know better.
absolutely. Which kind of links up to exactly what you've said, Dan. You know, we're like you said, we're getting very good at this. A segue. Um,
Mhm.
is that hence the point of our pod is that we realize
Mhm.
that the women's game is at a very pivotal stage in its development, and that for
Yes.
you know, it's forever in a constant state of flux. However, it's a bit like the
Yes.
scales. It could go one way or the other, but we want it to sit somewhere in the middle. If it tips
Balance.
slightly in the
Mhm.
middle, that's fine. But if it goes one way down, yeah, then that's just
Mhm.
no good for the women's
Yep.
game going forward, is it?
Agree. Agree completely, and I think this is one topic, federations and issues within federations is something we can explore at a future episode because
Yep,
Spain, unfortunately, is not alone in, this. We have had our fair share of issues for many different reasons.
yep,
Nigeria has also had a long, unfortunate history with it, and across Europe, honestly, you're still gonna find a lot of issues still to this day with federations. So definitely one to mark for the future. But Bev, I really do appreciate this conversation. I know our pod went a little longer, but I think we explored quite a few things, and I'm really
mm.
excited for the listeners to hear it.
And me too. What's the next one then? What's the next topic?
Oh my goodness. Actually, you know what? Do you want to have a conversation about federations and issues that have transpired? I think
Yeah,
that'd be a good one to follow up with this one. Yeah,
future
let's do
feds.
it.
Yep, yep, let's do that one then.
Awesome. Let's do that one. Thank you so much, everyone, for spending an hour and a half with us today. We do appreciate all your support. As Bev and I continue to say, please start engaging with us a little bit more. We'd love to hear your comments.
Yeah. Disagree with us. Have a view. Get it down in the
Disagree.
comments.
Yeah, disagree with us.
Yes.
Oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
please.
Please.
Yeah, it would be great to hear from you. It really, really would because it's all about building discussions, having discussions, and passing the baton on to other people so that, it raises the profile of the women's game in general.
Absolutely. Completely agree. Thank you so much, everyone, again, and we will see you next week. See you later, Bev.
Bye bye.